This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Well, here we are again. Doesn't seem like a couple of minutes since you were in here.
Boring the pants off to everyone.
I think you'll find setting new standards in broadcasting, actually, there, Bobby.
I think with travel news, it's quite limited.
Yeah, but you make it sing. You make it
Yes.
just polished and fabulous.
Yeah.
Correct.
Travel with bells on, that's what it is. Well, here we are, and we're starting. So it's time for me to say hello and welcome to the Confessions podcast from your
Smooth.
friends. Thank you, I think so.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
not your friends at Smooth. From your friends at BBC Radio
Somewhere
2. That won't get in. Anyway, this, as you know, is where sinful members of the Radio 2 audience gather to tell their tales of deceit, debauchery and deception, seeking dispensation from Sister Bobby and Brother Matt, who are here ready and poised and really happy to be going the extra mile for our
Always.
Confessions podcast. Bobby, you're looking particularly fabulous. Matt, you're looking like a groover.
Thank you. So am I.
This week, for your listening pleasure, we have Alice's confession, Hark the Herald Angels Sting. We've got Jules' sorry story, Every Day I Wipe the Book. It's the Cat P one. Richard's Tale, Running Scared, and another classic confession we've unearthed from the crypt, another Christmas confession on the way chosen by you. We start with Norval, telling us about a real twist in his tale, Does your Queen Mother know you're out?
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
Dear Simon and the Esteemed Collective, I wish to report on an episode in my life that will never happen again. I'd been requested to assist in a visit by the Queen Mother to the Cinque Port of Dover. She was to arrive by helicopter, which was to land in a local school on the cliffs of Dover, and she'd then be transferred to her limo for her drive into town. My involvement is that I was expected to assist in the transfer and ensure the convoy and escort were all parked correctly for a smooth getaway. Why me? Well, I wondered myself, was it because of my time in the forces, where I had regularly protected a helicopter in combat areas during landings? Well, either way, I'd been ordered to dress smartly and report to the stores for my comms. Okay?
For your what? For your comms.
I imagine that's a communication pack.
It's your, it's your headset.
Okay.
All that kind
Well
of stuff.
done.
Yes?
Thanks for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
just it's an education.
Yeah.
As there was a light rain, on and off, I had dressed in one of my suits and had on a grey calf-length raincoat. I duly turned up at the time requested, signed for my comms pack. There I was, squeaky clean, nice and smart, with an earpiece and curly wire going into my collar and a microphone in my cuff. I looked the biz. I had studied the drawn arrangements for all the personnel to memory, and I made my way to the main gates of the school. As it turns out, I was the first on site, and I was ready for my mission. Some uniformed police arrived and duly took over control of the school gates, refusing to let anyone in without my nod. The school was a military boarding school, but not all the staff lived on site. Thus, as vehicles arrived and were inspected, it was up to me whether they gained access or not. As it turns out, I didn't turn anyone away, as all were staff coming to work. During the next hour or so, more police and specials arrived, all showing their IDs. Outrider escorts and multiple vehicles also arrived. During this time, my superior turned up. At that point, one of the specials turned to the others, pointing at my boss, and said, "Who's this muppet?" He turned up in full combat gear, with his swagger stick under his arm, and was promptly told it was not appropriate dress, and he should leave and not come back. Looks like I was being promoted by default, so check me out. As more of the escort turned up, I duly arranged them into the correct order of march and parked accordingly, pointing out to those carrying arms a hidden area as they could prepare their weapons. So this is
Wow. This is,
interesting.
Where's
Who
this
knows
going?
where this is going?
Yeah.
As time drew near to the arrival of the helicopter, all the children of the school and staff started to arrive around the area to catch a glimpse of the Queen Mother. The police had sealed the gates and plainclothes staff were in position, while I was standing next to the door of the limo looking at all the spectators, many of whom appeared to be giving me a funny look. Then the noise of a helicopter was heard, and all eyes went to the sky, except mine, that is, because I'd been trained well. I walked up to the nearest plainclothes gent, tapped him on the shoulder to get his attention away from the helicopter and said, "I think all of you know what a helicopter looks like. You should be facing the crowd." This is like Jack Reacher.
Yeah,
That's what this is like.
This is so good.
Looking a bit embarrassed, he spoke into his wrist and faced outwards. I didn't see our royal guest disembark the helicopter that day as I was doing my job. However, when a few minutes later I saw children waving and cheering, I momentarily turned my head. The Queen Mother was no more than 2 feet from me and about to enter the limo, and I would like to believe she gave me a little smile. A few seconds later, the door closed and it was time for the convoy. The police opened the gates and started to mount their vehicles, but I immediately spotted a problem. It was rush hour and the school gate led out onto a public road where traffic passed in both directions at 70 miles an hour, and it was known locally as a notorious black spot. I approached a police commissioner, suggested he put some uniform officers out to stop traffic so the convoy could leave. Good idea, he replies, and sent out some of the boys in blue. The convoy duly left. Everyone was happy. The same commissioner then came back to me and said, "I don't recognise you. What branch are you from?" I looked straight in his face and replied, "Oh, I'm not one of you. I'm the school caretaker." There you go. And his face went white. Don't think anyone saw that one coming. He's clearly a caretaker with history, though, so he knows what he's doing.
Check him out.
And that's why he was in charge. Let's hear it for the caretakers. Father Simon, I don't seek forgiveness from any of the people present, especially as I help things run a lot smoother than they might have otherwise. My boss should have dressed more responsibly and not left me in charge, but maybe I do belatedly seek forgiveness from the commissioner, who was clearly aghast that a mere caretaker had been so close to the Queen Mum. Anyway, but it sounds, Norval, or however we should be pronouncing your name, that you were clearly the most appropriate one to be in charge because you knew the school, you had a military background, clearly. That's why you were protecting helicopters, so you were the man for the job, and you dressed appropriately, everything else. Anyway, Sister Bobby, did you see that coming?
I said, no, that is the biggest surprise so far this year. That and the church one. I have to say, Norval, well done. Congratulations. And why shouldn't you actually be in charge? Like you said, you know the school. You know all those children, probably by name. You know all the kind of, the mischievous ones that like to have fun, so you can spot all that coming. And you did your job. And you thought ahead. And you had all the traffic under control as well. And you knew the area. So I don't think you have really anything to be forgiven for.
No, the thing is, he knows how to tell a story as well, doesn't he? Right. So if he put it at the beginning, he was a caretaker. We go, well, it's just a Queen Mum story.
Yeah.
Also, you survived working at a school with all those children. That is worth everything. So you're forgiven on so many counts.
Brother Matthew.
The reason why this works is that my idea is that as soon as he gets that wire that goes from the ear down to the sleeve, as soon as he goes method, he's like, oh yeah, I am taking control. You watch the crowd, Sonny Jim.
We're back to Korea, 1954.
We all know what a helicopter looks like. Stop looking to the skies. I'm in charge, even though I'm the caretaker, like Hong Kong Phooey, a bit. So I am definitely going to forgive, just because he's got into... Which of us can say we've never fantasised about having one of those wires that goes down to, and then talking into your sleeve? Oh, I love all of that. So yes, definitely forgiven.
Is that what you'd like to do?
Oh, we all do, don't we?
Okay.
We all go around going, oh yeah, Charlie Tango, all of that.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon and your hopefully forgiving collective, chances are Matt will say forgiven, Bobby will go, I'm all right then. As I am now working as a finance officer for a Church of England diocese in the north of England, I feel that I must hide my true identity to prevent me receiving my P45 with my Christmas card from our bishop. A strong opening, Alice.
Yeah.
My confession starts in December 1974 when I was a 6-year-old little girl living in a small town in South Wales. My 2 sisters, our brother and I attended a local Sunday school, and our new Sunday school teacher, Blodwin, decided that we should do a nativity play. "Has anyone got a doll we could use for baby Jesus?" asked Blodwin. "I have," I said, thinking that if they were to use my doll, then I would surely be playing Mary. "Thank you, Alice," says Blodwin. "Right, let's decide who's going to play each part. Now then, who shall we have to play Mary?" said Blodwin, looking straight at me. Yes, I thought, my plan has worked. But as soon as Blodwin said my name, another girl in Sunday school, called Maria, threw herself on the floor and started screaming and crying and generally kicking off and having a tantrum. Clearly assessing the situation, Blodwin then had a quick about turn. "On second thoughts, Alice, you'd make a perfect angel and you can sing away in a manger on your own. Maria, if you dry your tears, you can be Mary." Soft teacher, Blodwin is. Anyway, Blodwin then smiled at me and said, "Don't be disappointed, there's always next year." Well, I was rather upset, Father Simon, but when I got home and told my mum, she said she'd make me the best angel costume ever, and that I could even help her make it if I liked. Fast forward to the night of the Nativity, I got dressed in my angel costume, wrapped my doll in one of my little brother's terry nappies, different times. It's the nearest we had to swaddling clothes back in the 70s, and put him in my backpack and went off to church. I had to stand behind Mary and Joseph with my arms stretched out for the whole performance, waiting for Mary, to say her one line, which was, "Baby Jesus is asleep in the manger," while she pulled the blanket off the manger. Now, in our nativity, you see, that was how Mary gave birth to Jesus. Not biologically accurate, but hey, it's Sunday school. What do you expect?
Okay.
Then I had to sing the first verse of Away in a Manger all by myself. All in all, for our first attempt at performing a nativity, everything went okay. Each week, whilst walking home from Sunday school for the next 11 months, I practiced that one line that Mary had to say so that I would be word perfect for our next nativity. Then the Sunday came when Blodwyn, still there, said, "OK, everyone, we need to talk about the Nativity." Good name for a movie. "Alice, can we use your doll again as baby Jesus?" "Yes, Miss Blodwyn, of course we can," I replied. "Here we go, I'm definitely in now." "Well," said Blodwyn, "I've been thinking about the Nativity. Everyone did so well last year. I've decided that we should all play exactly the same roles again this year, and I promise we will change next year." I couldn't believe my ears. I was gutted. But being the true professional that I was, dressed up again in my angel dress, wrapped my doll in my brother's terry nappy, placed him in the manger, and covered him with a blanket ready for Mary, to give birth to him again. Once again, the nativity went well. I couldn't wait until next year when, at last, I would be Mary. 11 months went past, and again the Sunday arrived when Blodwyn again said, "OK, everyone, we need to talk about the Nativity. You said that last year, miss." Then she continued by saying, "This year, I want us to perform a nativity that our audiences will never forget." Very bad idea.
Yeah.
"And tell everyone in town about. So as we've already got our costumes and we know our lines so well, we'll keep the same roles." Well, to say I was angry would have been an understatement, and I decided that if Blodwyn wanted a nativity that everyone would never forget, then I would certainly make sure that she got her wish. The night of the nativity arrived, and once again I got dressed up in my costume, including the tinsel-wrapped halo, which was by now so tight on my head it felt more like a crown of thorns. When we arrived at church, I once again placed my doll in the manger, ready for his appearance, and stood behind Mary and Joseph, my arms outstretched again, and the biggest smile on my face that I've ever had. The nativity commenced and was going along perfectly until Mary, pulled off the blanket that covered the baby Jesus. Then, instead of saying her one line, which I knew so well, Maria let out the most terrifying, blood-curdling scream of all time. See, earlier that night, when I went upstairs to wrap my doll in my brother's terry nappy, I happened to see my mum's red nail varnish, and so decided to drench my doll's face to make it look like there was blood pouring out of his eyes, of his nose, his mouth, and his ears and neck. Baby Jesus looked like a cross between Chucky and Son of Satan, rather than the Son of God, which is what he was supposed to look like. I know this is a shocking... Can I just say at that point, if you're feeling shocked, this woman works for the Church of England.
Yes.
Okay, she's a finance officer, so everything is okay. Okay? I know that if you're going to complain to her. I know, or the Archbishop. I know this was a shocking act, but consider, if you will, that in April of the following year, we moved away to the East Midlands, and I never got the chance to play Mary, and at 49 years old, I don't think I ever will. And so I don't seek forgiveness from Maria because I feel she deserved it, and I certainly do not seek forgiveness from Blodwyn. After all, I made her wish come true, a nativity that no one would ever forget. I do, however, seek forgiveness from the following. 1, the audience who had to witness a very red-faced, angry Sunday school teacher drag an angel off stage by the scruff of the neck. 2, my poor parents who had to try to tell me off whilst keeping a straight face when all they wanted to do was laugh. Good for them. 3, my lovely 2 older sisters and our friend Mandy, who after spending hours making their cardboard box camels, never got the chance to trot them down the aisle while singing We Three Kings. And of course the baby Jesus, who should never really be made to look like a cross between Chucky and the Son of Satan. Alice, who works for the Church of England, and so therefore it's okay. think, because finance officers will never do anything wrong. What do you think, Sister Bobby?
That's a traumatic childhood. You go to Sunday school and the world is unfair, but you'd expect in Sunday school there would be some fairness, Also,
I don't think Miss Blodwin was helping very much, was she?
No, I'm saying is I don't know what Miss Blodwin was up to, because I think she was very unfair and something was going on, because it's not only you that lost out, everyone else. The shepherds wanted to be angels.
Do you think
everything.
money was exchanging hands between Blodwin and
Maria's mum?
Maria's parents?
I'm not. I
Have a tenner, Blodwin.
All
Thank
I
you.
would say
Same
is,
again.
Alice, you're a girl after my own heart in this case. You are absolutely forgiven.
Same again, Miss Blodwin. We'll give you a mince pie.
Yes, the stench of corruption hangs
Do you
over
think-
this particular production, I'm going to say. If all nativities like this, I might actually turn up and watch them, because normally they're awful, apart from the bit involving your kid, which is obviously fabulous.
Let's all film it together.
Yes, let's
Stand
all
up.
film it. Oh, there they are being the shepherd. I don't care about the rest, because it doesn't involve my child.
And the great thing is, when you're casting a modern nativity, there's an octopus.
Yes, and there's
And a
Elvis,
cowboy.
and the robots are in now. Well, clearly Blodwin, because we all know what was going on with Blodwin. Blodwin couldn't cope with Maria throwing the diva, crying on the floor. So basically, Blodwin took the easy way out by saying, "We're just going to have the same parts every year." Well, you reap what you sow, Blodwin. You reap what you sow.
I reckon she got a Christmas box.
Absolutely, yes. There's definitely corruption there. So I'm going to say forgiven.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Thanks to Alice for a devilish tale. Hark the Herald Angels sting. For those of you who don't listen to the show in the week, thanks.
Yeah,
I mean, we turn up.
We do.
All you have to do is turn us on. Anyway, you miss out when we hear the reaction to the confessions from those who bothered to listen to it live. And Alice's confession provoked this text. Mags in Durham. When my sister was Mary, I was an angel with a real lit candle. The carol went like this. Silent night, holy night, Maggie, 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 your hair's a... As I was bashed over the head with a hymn book, totally stealing the show from my big sister as my curly hair lit up. You see, that's why you should be listening live, because
Yeah.
you're missing out on that. Anyway, still to come, find out who Matt is talking about here.
Walking around like they're walking onto the daddy's yacht.
Yeah, it's probably not who you think, actually. It's one of the more bizarre reactions.
Yeah.
Anyway, time again to see the parish notice board. There it is, looming dead ahead, adorned with some lovely tinsel, which has been... Who provided the tinsel? You say Claire Runacres
Yes.
provided the
Claire
tinsel?
Runacres.
But
yeah.
Claire Runacres, because you have to say it like that. But your room, by the way, Matt, is the worst
It
decorated
is, isn't
room
it?
I
It's
have ever seen.
pretty poor.
But she
yeah.
gave the best to us, you see.
Yeah, it's true.
So anyway, Bobby, what's caught your attention this week?
Well, Matt emailed in to say, good afternoon, well, good evening or good morning to the purveyors of peccadillo pardons. Peccadillo pardons? We haven't had that before.
No,
have we?
that's good.
I don't think that even works,
No,
does it?
well, there you go. I'm currently working through the newly reworked Confessions podcast from September onwards, so he's got loads to get through, and I'm particularly enjoying the naughty confessions. However, I feel you need a pithy name for the section and offering the following. So he's offering definitely infringes confessions compliance, or DICC.
Yeah, no, that's...
That's not
As
getting
no
on.
one is
Yeah.
as no one is calling it.
No,
Yeah, no.
don't think
He
so.
also wants to add a 5-star rating in the iTunes ratings.
Excellent,
Yeah,
very
of
good.
course.
So thank
We
you,
need
Matt, but not
those.
that one. Now, Matt, is this one.
Yes, Steve Brown emailed in his own mini confession after hearing Jules's library-themed confession, which you're going to hear later. He says, many years ago, when my son was 6 years old, I discovered a library book that was 6 months overdue. Now, our local library had a reputation for ensuring fines were paid in full on return, which, as I am tight, I was reluctant to part with my hard-earned cash. So, I hatched a cunning plan, telling my son to look sad when I went to the lady at the returns desk and explained in my saddest voice that my wife had left us 6 months ago and I'd just discovered this library book under the bed. The librarian quickly filled up and with trembling lip told me not to worry about the fine and promptly stamped and returned the book to stock. I don't expect forgiveness for this, as I did it for a wheeze to get the upper hand with the library assistants and get away with paying the fine. However, I would like to apologise to my young son for dragging an innocent child into my ruse, and to the library assistant for making her lip wobble and making her give a compassionate fine credit to a lying toe rag. Merry Christmas to you all.
Well, Merry Christmas to you. Do you remember the confession we had a while back from a mother whose husband had died and they got two young kids and saw an old, annoying, interfering neighbour
Yes.
coming up. I thought, I don't want to go into another conversation about what happened in the past. So they just pretended that he'd gone to prison.
Yes, he's in jail.
And the kids just backed her up. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. He'll be gone for a while. Very good. Tom has emailed in with a complaint. I have some feedback regarding your podcast, and rather than post it on the iTunes or whatever it is, I thought I'd go straight to the source. Let me set the scene. I'm on my lunch break, walking back to work from the local shopping, eating, watching complex. I take a bite into my sandwich, a particularly fine example of the prawn mayo variety. How dare you? I'd been looking forward to this midday sustenance all morning, but then, through my headphones, I hear talk of a banned confession, one that involves such vile and putrid utterances that I'm immediately sick in a bush. So we actually...
I'm immediately
Was
sick
it not
in
the
a
sandwich?
The story involved is the tale of a valued listener and her sick-eating cat, which we did last week. It was a double eat.
Yes, it was. Yes,
double
yes.
vom.
Yeah.
If this was not bad enough, your posse, if that's what they are, then follow this up by discussing the digestive indiscretions of our canine followers.
Yeah.
And I was sick in another bush. Therefore, in conclusion, I believe you owe me recompense for the aforementioned delicious triangular Lunchable. Also, just a quick heads up before you mention something like this would be great. Thank you. I think, do we give him a car sticker for that? Because we've got a few in our festive pile. I think...
Is there not a danger here that someone listening to this will now be sick in a bush
Yes,
and
I
will be in
heard.
some kind of vomit loop that goes on and on forever?
How many car stickers do we have?
Well, I don't know.
12?
Well, maybe he doesn't get one then.
Okay.
No, sorry, mate. Absolutely not. Because we mentioned Vomit Dominoes, but now we're in, which is the Vom Dom, but now we're in the Vomit Loop,
Yeah, the thing is, it's Christmas, and maybe we should be generous.
Maybe.
but maybe not.
Yeah.
You two are mean.
Before we head back to the confessional booth, it's time for the definitely infringes confession compliance bit, as named by Matt. Actually, that's not going to.
No,
it's not
no.
going to happen. So, Charlie's story about editing in some non-technical terms to a dull work, health and safety form was very amusing, right up until the point he revealed the words he added in were more biological,
Right.
and gusset is the only one that we can use here. The story from Danielle isn't perhaps that offensive, but is probably not for when small ears are listening. Apparently Danielle hadn't realised her front window decorations could be reached by her cats, and came home one day to realise that the whole street could see the cats had ripped down the first L and E from Let It Snow.
Oh. Hang on, right
I know, I'm to what?
Take out the L and the E.
Oh!
There we go.
Oh, that's very good.
Really? Is that what they're offering?
Does it exist?
Probably not. There goes the
my
neighbourhood.
Yes! Wow.
Lindsay, your story of your alternative use for the turkey baster before it was used on Christmas Day, even if it was for a genuine
No.
medical complaint, is frankly so disgusting that we have no words.
No.
No.
But
No.
in fact, I've never had a confession with the word turkey baster in which has got anywhere.
No.
And Jordan, you might have had a nice Christmas Eve in the pub, but to continue your party at midnight mass, complete with walking in late with a cigarette in your mouth, a beer in your hand, and loudly asking the organist if she had any Stevie Winwood or Beatles, was not a very Christian-like thing to do. And worst of all, you embarrassed your nan, who was volunteering at the church that
Oh,
night.
dear. No.
Loutish behaviour at midnight mass.
Midnight mass is always, yes.
Just don't do it.
No.
Go home,
Yeah.
fall asleep, vom in a bush. Don't go to church. If you have something, albeit more family-friendly, to share, confessions@bbc.co.uk. And even if it's not, send it in anyway. You never know what will happen to it. And hold on, last week's notice is still on the parish notice board this week, still covered in tinsel and flashing lights, although one of the bulbs has obviously stopped working. It says this: as you know, it's now the 1st of December. Obviously, Christmas is on its way. Due to a numbers mix-up in the marketing department, we have quite a few of our fabulous drive-time car stickers going spare. So getting into the Christmas spirit, we'll generously send you a bumper sticker if, 1, you're the first to tweet the end of podcast code word, but you don't know what it is yet, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
If you can get another member of your family to subscribe to the podcast, obviously photographic proof will be needed. Email to confessions@bbc.co.uk. or you send us some praise.
Yes, because we're desperate, you know.
It says here constructive criticism, but
No, I don't think we need any of that, thanks.
5-star reviews,
No.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, you may well get a sticker. You know, I think we should give a sticker. I'm feeling that Tom earlier probably did deserve one.
Yes, no.
Yes or no? You
Tis
said yes
the
and no.
season, so yes.
Okay. Mentions go to Eddie Piehands, Spark Hughes and Captain Wayne, who are just a few of the reviewers this week, although we're not so sure how much of you meant it, featuring lines such as #give me a sticker. I just want a free sticker, and I've done my duty as an avid listener. Please can I have my car bumper sticker now?
Where's my sticker? Yeah.
Exactly. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. We might send you a sticker, but #give me a sticker is a thing, apparently. Right, back to this week's confessions. Time to revisit Jules's confession. Every day I wipe the book.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon and the perspicacious and pulchritudinous pastorate.
Very
Wow.
good. Very good.
We
I
hadn't
need a
had-
dictionary.
We haven't had that one before. Thanks, Jules. They all talk like that in New Zealand.
Yeah, they do.
As a devout bibliophile and a careful and cautious library borrower, I am never an overdue fine against my name, not one. It pains me to write this confession, but I seek your forgiveness for a heinous crime against books committed in the winter of 2015. It was a bleak and miserable winter in the most southern depths of New Zealand. My son had just turned 3, and the freezing days were full of sleet and bitter Antarctic winds. The weather meant that we were often confined to the house, and many hours were spent snuggled by the fire reading books. Our small city boasted a wonderful library, and whenever we felt brave enough to face a trip across town in the howling southerlies and horizontal hail, we sought refuge in the council facilities there. And every time without fail, we returned home with a skyscraper stack of new books that I could barely carry. As I mentioned, I was a diligent and conscientious library borrower. I had a specific library book bag, extra large and reinforced to carry the weight of the 20 to 30 books we borrowed at a time. That's a large amount. But I guess if you can only go when weather permits, then maybe that's understandable. All library books stayed inside this bag when not being read, and at the end of the lending period they were carefully checked off one by one against the receipt to ensure none were missing. This habit had served us well and was also a sanity saver, as I am prone to slight control freak tendencies when it comes to misplacing items, particularly borrowed ones. But with this system, there was never any need to panic, as the books were always where they should be and always accounted for. Now, also, as mentioned earlier, Father Simon, it was a particularly cold and fearsome winter. Most of the windows were double glazed, however the bathroom wasn't, and we would regularly wake to find a thick layer of condensation frozen in a smooth pane of ice covering the inside of the bathroom window most mornings. We did have a fire, however, and we kept it stoked night and day, which kept the house a very comfortable temperature and was also a great source of delight for our cat, who enjoyed lounging in front of it. The living room door was kept ajar at night to allow the heat from the fire to escape down the hallway and keep the overall temperature of the house at a more ambient level. You should know central heating is a rare feature in New Zealand homes, which I did not know. One morning I woke to find the door to the lounge closed, but aside from the minor annoyance of the overnight heat not having reached us, I didn't give it much thought. The day continued as usual, and after lunch I decided that since my son had given up his afternoon nap, some quiet time reading in a beanbag by the fire was called for. I walked towards the book bag tucked carefully next to the coffee table, where the library books were always so carefully stowed at the end of each reading session, as I think I've told you. I leant down to select a few books, and lifting them out of the bag, I noticed that the books I was holding were damp.
Oh, no.
How strange, I thought to myself. Has someone spilled a drink in here? Did the roof leak in the night and drip into the bag? I leafed through the bag of books and removed the handful of damp ones, noting their curling pages as my sense of puzzlement grew. Father Simon, the sudden dawning of realization as to why these books were wet hit me at the same time as the smell, the acrid and unmistakable stinking odour of cat urine.
Oh, no.
Is that what you wrote on your
Yes,
note?
I did. I
There
wrote
you go.
this.
Passing notes. Yeah, that's upside down, but I think it says cat wee.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Cat weed you've written, which
yeah.
is something else and also illegal. Anyway. I realised in horror that the closed door I discovered in the morning had meant the cat had been trapped in the lounge overnight with no access to a litter tray. She had chosen my pile of books in the bag to use as her makeshift toilet, and the paper pages of the books had done a fine job of absorbing the liquid. Well, Father Sam, what could I do? What did I do? Well, did I ring the library to confess, apologise profusely and offer to pay for the damaged books? No, I did not. Instead, I did what any quick-thinking mother would do when faced with unwanted we. I washed the books. I actually did. I actually washed them books. Armed with a spray bottle of disinfectant, I held each book over a bucket and sprayed to dilute and wash away the cat urine. Then I used a towel to blot the Dettol-soaked pages before putting the books in the hot water cupboard, with the wet pages carefully spread apart so as not to stick together. My horrified husband was silently complicit after I confidentially said, "It'll be fine." Actually, confidently said, not confidentially said. I confidently said, "It'll be fine."
It'll be fine.
Because they talk like that in New Zealand. The books took 2 to 3 days to dry, and another 2 days with heavy objects on them to try to iron out the wrinkles of the paper from having been wet, which is almost an impossible task. Then I waited until a weekend evening when the library wasn't open and hurriedly returned the books through the after-hours slot. We no longer live in the South Island, but until we shifted, I avoided making eye contact with the librarians in that particular city. I still flush with shame every time I think of my actions. So I imagine she's gone to the North Island now.
Yes.
Father Simon, I beg forgiveness not only from the librarians, but from all the parents and children who have subsequently borrowed these picture books and wondered what the strange smell was. Well, the answer is disinfectant mixed with cat wee, emanating from the crumpled pages. Will the collective find it in their hearts to forgive me? My guess is, Jules, from the South Island, my guess is probably yes, because you were trying to do the right... I suppose entirely the right thing would have been to replace the books, but there are a lot of them. Sister Bobby.
Lovely story. Really lovely story. And for any of us who've had animals and faced with that, when you step in it with a sock. But I have to say, books are important. And of course, the library had lent you books for free for many years. And I think on this occasion, Jules, although it seems quite tough, I think what you should have done is cleaned it off anyway, gone and been honest, and then said, would you like me to replace them? Then they might have said, actually, look, they're still intact, they're still usable, thank you very much, and taken them back. But I think, Jules, you should have owned up, because that library had served you well. And maybe then you wouldn't have had to move across to another island and escape. So you are not forgiven, Jules, on this time.
That after-hours slot would have smelt quite pleasant, wouldn't it,
I mean,
on the
let's
Monday
be honest
morning?
here. Jules went, excuse me, she went above and beyond, didn't she, with cleaning this particular, all of these books. I think I'd have done that. I'd have tried to dry them out and then, put them in the after-hours slot and then move to a different island. But I think what we're doing here is we're forgetting the real culprit here, which is the cat, which flouncing around, lounging in front of the fire.
That's what cats do.
Treating everything like it's walking around like they're walking onto the daddy's yacht, and then treating literature as its own personal litter tray. That's where the finger of blame should be
pointing.
pointing.
Are you saying the cat represents the upper class?
Correct. Yes, that's exactly what I'm... Class war against the cats. So I am forgiving.
They're very art school, the cats, aren't they?
Yeah,
It's
I
like they're
think so.
just
The
in their head, they're wearing a
berets.
beret all the time.
Yeah.
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon and the collective, forgive me, for I have sinned very much. Many years ago, I worked for a very large company, which we're not going to mention. I was lucky enough to be invited to their annual January shindig at a famously posh hotel just north of Stirling. That is as precise as we're going to get. After a convivial evening, I retired to bed and rose just before 6 a.m. to go for my constitutional early morning run. As I entered the plush lobby in my ridiculous lycra ensemble, a staff member who was lighting one of the many open fires wished me luck, but also warned me, and I quote, to be careful out there in the dark. Okay. Actually, should have said it in the voice of the verger from Dad's Army.
The Scottish verger.
You better be careful out there in the dark. Or maybe not.
That is just one of your voices.
It's actually just a normal voice. Obviously, in my still slightly inebriated state, I ignored his warning. As I stumbled outside into the cold, I soon realised that it was indeed dark, as you would expect before dawn in central Scotland in January. But as my eyes became accustomed to the lack of light, I soon noticed that it was a beautiful clear sky with millions of stars evident, and a reasonably bright moon too. I began to run on this hotel's famous golf course, narrowed it down a bit, and found no difficulty keeping to the gravel paths which glowed in the moonlight. After about 20 minutes of huffing and puffing, I rounded a corner on the path just as a lone cloud moved in front of the moon, plunging my route into darkness. As I began to slow, trying not to trip in the dark, I immediately ran headlong into my victim. Bang!
Oh, no.
At this point, I should probably point out that I'm not the typical shape of a runner. In fact, my shape is probably more suited to the front row of a rugby scrum. In running terms, I'm approximately 1 Simon Mayo tall, but weigh at least as much as, let's say, 2.5 Simon Mayos. So when I ran into my poor, unsuspecting victim, I hit them with sufficient force to elicit a harumph as I knocked the wind out of their sails. I also hit them with enough force to knock them clean off their feet. With my forward momentum suitably diminished, I tripped over their prone form and landed squarely on top of them, which led to another slightly quieter harumph. As it turns out, this person was also quite a hefty unit, and I too was winded as I rolled them onto my back and slowly regained my composure. As soon as I recovered sufficiently, I apologised. "I'm sorry, mate," as we say around these parts. I just didn't see you there. Didn't see you in the dark." To my absolute horror, there was no answer. So again, I apologised. Again, no answer. And I did think that maybe I'd killed them. That would be a confession of a different kind,
Obviously,
wouldn't
that
it?
wouldn't get on.
I wonder what's
if you
happening.
had.
Here we go on page 2. Oh, there's no page 2. With rising dread, I sat up just as the aforementioned cloud moved past the moon and the scene of the crime was bathed in the moonlight again. I turned to my victim and was momentarily relieved as they turned to me and stared straight up into my eyes. This relief was fleeting, though, because once my brain caught up, I then screamed with fright, leapt to my feet and ran off into the night at a pace which would have left Samo trailing easily. My victim simultaneously leapt up and went off in the other direction. When I got back to the hotel, the firelighting member of staff noticed my agitation, and after I explained why I was even more breathless than most fat businessmen who take on the undulating golf course after a late night, he confirmed that yes, there were stags out there.
Stags?
And that they were known to sleep on the paths. So when I said my victim simultaneously leapt up and went off in the opposite direction, what I meant to say was my victim got back on his 4 hooves and galloped off in the opposite direction, horns glinting in the moonlight. So therefore, I seek forgiveness from the stag, who was minding his own business and did not expect to be mown down by a chartered accountant from Croydon in Lycra whilst having a well-earned kip. Needless to say, I now run on main roads in large cities with street lighting. Well, you've got to be very careful, haven't you? You've got to keep your eyes open. You never know who you're going to run into, but you wouldn't expect necessarily to run into a stag and knock the stag off its feet. Sister Bobby, here she goes.
Richard, they told you to be careful. You thought, I'll be all right, it's nothing to be careful of. But you were running in the wrong woods, really, weren't you? What I'm going to say is, I'm not going to forgive you. I'm not going to forgive you because you should have taken care. You should have been aware that may have been livestock. You were very lucky, actually, not to have ended up on one of the end of those horns. So count yourself lucky. Count yourself that he didn't come after you as well, and that you could run fast enough. But you're not forgiven because the livestock take priority in my world. So you are not forgiven.
So the animal's kind of more important, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Than the humans?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, in this
all
world,
right.
you're in their environment. Take care of them.
Okay, Nigel.
Now, having done quite a lot of cross-country running at various stages in my life, I loved running in the great outdoors. I didn't really like running in cities or on tarmac or anything. So if you could run across fells, so lucky enough to do that, great. But it doesn't sound to me like Richard is well suited for this type of running. Certainly at 6 o'clock in the morning, that'll learn him for going out in his lycra in the middle of Scotland in January, when it'll be covered in snow as it is now, I'm sure. And then for taking out a stag, a new meaning to a stag night, because it was still dark. And in this case, definitely, Ricardo, don't do it. You're not forgiven.
Okay, it's looking tough for you at the moment, Richard.
Well,
Matthew.
here's the thing. I go running early in the morning, and I tend to go in the dark.
You run into wildlife all the
because,
time.
Well, yeah, I don't want anyone else seeing my purple, sweaty face as I am desperately trying to do 10k in under, an hour and a half. Yeah. So I would. absolutely love it, because when I get home, my wife always says, "How was the run?" I would absolutely love to be able to say, "Oh yeah, knocked over a stag. Anyway, I'm off for a shower. Yeah, knocked over a stag." I'd tell that story again.
Do they have many stags?
Not many stags
your neck of the
in
woods?
Arnos Grove's worth saying. More's the pity. So I'm going to say forgiven.
Because
Just because,
Okay.
I'd love to be able to do that.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
This was Richard's confession, running scared, which prompted this reaction on the people's verdict. I am the risk and environmental manager of that famous 5-star resort. He didn't fill in an incident form. And as a bonus, we have this incident on CCTV, and it is hilarious. Imagine that. Well, as I mentioned on the programme on Thursday, if there was CCTV footage of most of these confessions, it probably would make
Yes.
a very interesting TV show.
Is that a first?
I don't think we've had that before. We said, yes, that confession is true, and we've got it on film. I don't think that's happened before. Probably just as well. So that concludes this week's batch of confessions. If you've got one, confessions@bbc.co.uk. But before we go, another treat from the confession script this week has been requested by Richard Patterson, Elisa, Rihanna, John Cook, and Nursey Nancy, who sent us this email. Simon and team, I downloaded your podcast to listen to on holiday and have just spent the last fortnight giggling to myself at some of the confessions you've been sent. As a result, I've had 5 minutes to put pen to paper. I wonder if you would repeat the confession, which relates to some drunken Christmas Eve frolics with 2 brothers. Now, that was a bit of a vague introduction, because there are quite a few Christmas Eve frolics which involve trips to the pub, first of all. However, we did find it, and this confession is called Grease is the Bird.
The Confessions podcast.
To the eclectic ecclesiastic, says Bill, my confession dates back to a Christmas Eve way back in the heady 1990s. After getting an early start from work, I headed straight down to the local hostelry, you understand, to meet up with the usual suspects for a few jars before heading home. I was still living at home with my mum, my dad, my brother and sisters at the time. Using an athletics metaphor in this Olympic year and all, what was meant to be a Usain Bolt type sprint turned out to be a Mo Farah 1500 metres as pint after pint was consumed. In the meantime, my brother had also finished work and joined me in the merriment, managing to catch up and feel as tired and emotional as I was by the time last orders were called. We left the establishment this Christmas Eve around 11 p.m, and our 5-minute walk home took the customary 20 minutes, including the obligatory rearrangement of the Santa Stop Here signs outside the neighbours' houses. We then arrived home to find that our dad had been to another establishment that evening, and he too had become tired and emotional, but seemingly less emotional and more tired, as he was fast asleep in his armchair with Singing in the Rain blasting out on the television. It was at this point when my brother and I decided that we would follow the beautiful smell that was coming from the kitchen to see exactly what was going on there. Well, Father Simon, it was the most glorious of smells, the waft of freshly cooked turkey that was still warm and crispy and golden, and really, quite honestly, just inviting somebody to taste it. Let's just have a small piece each, we said to each other, and promptly delved in to the succulent bird without further ado. Before we knew it, Father Simon, we had eaten 3/4 of the turkey. Wow. And coming promptly to our senses, and for some reason suddenly sober, we realised that we were going to be really in for it when Mum woke up in the morning. And this is where our master plan, and subsequently my confession, truly begins. I must have been asleep for about an hour before I was woken up by my mum's hysterical, shrieking voice. She'd gone downstairs to wake Dad up and make him go to bed, but was confronted by an unexpected sight. Dad was still asleep in the armchair, with a turkey leg in his hand, and one large but 3/4 eaten turkey on the chair next to him. Yes, my brother and I had planted the evidence and made a fast exit. It was the perfect crime. Dad had drunk so much, he couldn't actually remember getting in, and although he didn't remember eating the turkey, didn't remember not eating the turkey, so guilty as charged. The grease that we smeared on his lips must also have made it seem a lot more likely that he was indeed the greedy, guilty party. It was at the dinner table the next day, Christmas Day, and the pangs of guilt hit us. Mum had managed to rescue a bit of the turkey, and she shared what was left with me, my brother, my 2 sisters, and herself, with not a shred of meat
for my rotten father. Dad was hanging his head in shame, looking sheepish and repeatedly saying, no, you eat, it's fine. I deserve not to have any for what I've done. I must admit, I wasn't proud of what we had done, but we'd gone too far to back out now. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for this terrible crime of deception, for loading the blame onto my own father, whose only crime was to have a little too much to drink on Christmas Eve, and for ruining the lovely dinner that my mum had worked so hard to prepare. I must let you know, however, that as an act of self-penitence, every Christmas when Mum has dished out the servings, I take a piece of turkey off my plate and put it onto my dad's plate when no one is looking. But still to this day, my father thinks he is guilty of his midnight Christmas binge. Shocking tale. There are lots of stories which start like that, and maybe eat the mince pies and that kind of thing, but no one, as far as I know, until Bill and his brother have had the kind of foresight to actually plant all the evidence on Sleepy Father. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
That is absolutely hilarious. It really makes me think of the Royal Family, the TV series. You can imagine the dad sitting in the armchair with the turkey. I have to say, it's pretty mean on the poor old dad, and not really in the festive spirit, though. And it just makes me really sad to think about it. So I'm really sorry, Bill.
He still thinks it was him?
He still thinks it was him, exactly. And I mean, I know the leg of turkey goes on his plate every year, but that's just not enough. So, Bill, I'm really sorry, but you're not forgiven.
Not forgiven. I don't think anyone's going to forgive this one.
Well, I think this is one of those stories that is going to be told again and again throughout the years, and everyone will laugh about it, won't they? And I don't. So I think it was a great idea. It's the sort of thing that's just funny. Nobody really got hurt, and the only people who did get hurt, I felt sorry for the mum, because
Mum was cross.
Yeah, she was really
shamed.
cross, and she'd gone to a lot of trouble to get the turkey done and everything. But I think it's really funny, and they'll get miles and miles of stories out of this for years. So I think I'm going to forgive you,
Brother Matthew.
I think the genius about this is smearing the grease onto the lips of the father. That's what really turns this one around.
You would think he was guilty, and the fact that he didn't know that he wasn't guilty.
I love the fact that I was a bit drunk last night and I can't remember not doing this, so he couldn't even fight his own corner. Superb. What an excellent story. However, we do have to point out, because I know we'll get emails and I'll get hauled up if I don't say it, but Mo Farah didn't run in the 1,500 metres. It was a 5,000 and 10,000 metres.
And therefore not forgiven.
But that doesn't stop it from being a great story and a complete screw. It's going to be the best laugh this week.
OK, now we're making an occasional appearance, Brother Nigel.
Well, Bill and Ben, they should get enterprise grants. That was so clever, and I thought it was really good. And using the chicken leg as well to plant that on Dad. No wonder he was tired and emotionally. 4 children, finding solace in alcohol. But the thing, you see, it was Mum, really, who's made a terrible culinary faux pas. But she's cooked the turkey the night before, which you should never do. We talked about that recently, because you don't want to be doing that. You want to cook them quickly, but shortly, as short a pace as
so it's her fault.
Really, yes, for going too soon.
Good.
Mum peaked too soon on this occasion. So Bill and Ben, the brothers, I do, and even Dad. I mean, gluttony, unconscious gluttony. So yeah, cook it on the morning. Cook it quickly. Don't stuff it, and keep it as succulent. Keep it breast side down. There you go, Mum.
But
that's the turkey.
Forgiven or not forgiven?
Oh, absolutely forgiven.
Oh, absolutely forgiven.
Yes,
OK,
yes.
all right.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
And that was our confession from the crypt this week, with Nigel in there. Sally is in there, Mother Superior.
Nigel was very much the voice of reason, though, which is not normally something you associate with Nigel.
As well as Rebecca and Matt. So you haven't... had you heard that one before?
I have heard it. It's actually very, very disappointing. It's very disappointed in them, and I would not have forgiven. That's why I wouldn't.
No, I think what they did, it was terrible. I mean, it really, really was bad. Poor Dad.
Yes, but, you know, if you drink so much that you can't remember, then...
Fair enough.
You should not be taken advantage of when you're in that state.
So true, Bobby, so true.
Especially by your kids.
Yeah.
Thanks, kids.
You'd have thought.
If you have a request for a vintage confession, send us over the details, if you can remember them, please. As many as you can. confessions@bbc.co.uk, and we'll do our best to dig them out from the crypt. So, Sister Bobby forgave 2 this week. Which takes your yearly tally to 88.5 against 85.5. Matt, you just forgave everybody.
Because I love everyone. It's all out there, everyone. Come on. Let's use without, casting the first snowball, as it were.
That's right. That's so wise.
Very much, isn't it, though?
So if you made it to the end of the last podcast, you had to tweet, "I'm just disappointed with Tom Baker." So thanks to Kat, who was the first to tweet the code word. So a drive time bumper sticker is on its way to you. Pam, Billy, Thomas, Polly, loads of more did just that, but don't get the sticker. Sorry, but them's the rules. This week's code phrase is Is that cat wearing a beret? You can subscribe, and don't forget you can hear our whole show every weekday from 5 on BBC Radio 2. But if you subscribe, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do this downloading thing every single week. It's just going to be there on your machine every single week, which will be a lovely thing. Thank you very much, Steve, for listening. Your confessions, please, would be very, very welcome. Matt, you've been fabulous. Bobby, you're absolutely amazing.
Brilliant.
No,
So
Good
you,
night, Simon.
obviously.
Yes.
Oh, that's the cue, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the cue,
Simon,
yeah.
you're good
great
too.
yeah.
The Confessions Podcast. Go in peace.